officially welcome everybody to this Falkirk Apple RTC session on accessibility, reaching all learners. My name is Kerry Abercrombie. Hello to you, those of you who I've never met before. I am the Curriculum Development Officer for Falkirk Council, and I'm just here to introduce the session. I'm going to have a little bit of input here and there, as we would usually do for an in-person experience. And I'll also be taking care of the chat, as I've already mentioned today. So please do put any comments or questions into the chat as we go along, and I'll make sure that we stop at appropriate times and get to any of those questions that you might have. Now, as I've already mentioned, this is a Falkirk Apple RTC, but we are being joined today by colleagues from further afield. So I just want to assure you that the stuff that we're talking about today are built into Apple devices, iPad, and in some cases iPhone as standard. So if you're coming from another local authority, you should hopefully have access to all of the things that we speak about today. And as well as coming from a local authority, you will hopefully have access to all of these things on your personal device as well, if you have one. So welcome to everybody from Falkirk, and welcome to everybody who is coming from beyond Falkirk. Now, I am delighted to welcome Mary Jane Patterson as our facilitator today. Mary Jane is an Apple Professional Learning Specialist and a former member of the Connected Falkirk team, and she works in our ASC provision at one of our local high schools. She is, however, a primary school teacher by trade with a specialism in languages. So I am sure she'll be approaching the notion of accessibility from multiple lenses today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Mary Jane, who's going to lead us on this session this afternoon. Mary Jane.
Thanks, Kerry. I'm absolutely buzzing to be here facilitating this session this afternoon. However, I must say I always forget about that big record button, and I wish I'd probably brushed my hair before I started, so apologies everyone. It's really nice to have everyone here today, so I'm just going to get started. We've got a wee plan for this afternoon, and it's mainly split into 5 parts that we're going to explore together. The first part is going to be around why accessibility tools are important. And then we're going to look at accessibility tools in terms of learning and teaching. And we've categorised them into 4 categories: reading tools, writing tools, focus tools, and then physical tools as well, which Kerry's going to support a little bit as well because she's got some fab things to show us today. The accessibility features that we are exploring today are not the only ones available on iPad, iPhone, or personal devices. There are a lot more there that can support you and your pupils in class. But hopefully this session will just give you a bit of a starting point so that you can then further explore the wide range that is available to us. There are going to be some demos today, so please feel free to follow along with me if you wish. And of course, like Kerry's already said, any questions, just pop them in the chat. Kerry and I will bounce back and forward to answer these when we've got an available minute. And I'm just going to also note at this point that the iPad I'm using is currently on iOS 16.5. So please don't panic if you've got a device next to you and it maybe doesn't quite look the same or the features don't look quite the same. I'm currently on the latest update, so it's just so nobody panics. So, why are accessibility tools important? Accessibility has to be dynamic by nature. We work in environments where our pupils have ever-changing needs, and sometimes these can be on a day-to-day basis. And the technology that we use to support them also needs to be dynamic so that we can then successfully meet those needs. For some of our pupils, accessibility is vital, but accessibility is also valuable for all of our pupils, and obviously for our educators as well. The image that's currently on screen is a picture of an everyday accessibility feature that I'm sure many people have come across, and it's designed for a specific user, but it does have a clear benefit for all. I'm going to just throw this out there, Kerry, as well. Maybe people can pop things in the chat, but who might actually benefit from this? If you've got an idea, if you want to pop it in, Kerry, maybe you could read some out, or
I will do when they come in. I take it you've got some ideas in your mind of who that might be.
I've got some ideas as well, but I'm just thinking, yep, so great, I can see the chat now, so visually impaired was one of my first ones, which is amazing. So thinking of people that maybe have low vision or low contrast or depth perception. Another one that's coming to my mind are users of wheelchairs, or those that we've got prams for children, even trolley access. I'm thinking also of people with low motor control. There's a huge list of people that would benefit from this. And it's the change in the texture and the colour as a warning prior to the pavement edge that gives advance notice. There's a clear structure and logic to the design and function. So I think the main point is, even though there's a specific user in mind for this feature, all can benefit from it. In my next image, there's a very clear physical need. And if we had a pupil in our classroom with this physical need, we would naturally make certain adaptations to our classroom and the way that we're teaching things to support that pupil. As with physical needs, we can also use technology to accommodate the learning needs of our pupils as well. And these can totally vary. So it might be support with specific tasks or a specific subject area. It could actually be a short time need. So, for example, somebody with a broken wrist or a broken arm may need short-term adaptations, but there is also those that may need constant or consistent support in their learning as well. So when we're going through today's demos, we'll probably have a whole host of pupils at the back of our minds thinking, oh, that would be good for this pupil, they would really benefit. But also the pupils that we have in our class, all of them, everybody could use these accessibility features. This next quote, Ken and I actually both commented on this the other day. That's really interesting. So around a third of children and young people in Scotland's publicly funded schools, which is about 233,000, need additional support. And as educators, we all have experience of supporting some kinds of additional needs within our classrooms, regardless of the setting we work in. Some may have actual formal diagnosis, but how many pupils potentially have an undiagnosed need? With our iPad, the supports that are available to any pupil and any educator who needs or wants to use them. And it's important that we know, and our pupils are also aware, that these features exist, and they can just be used at any time that they require them. There's so many that they can access that actually just make tasks easier as well. It's not even just about a need for them. They make things quicker. They make things more accessible for us. And I absolutely love this. Vital for some, valuable for all. As I mentioned at the start, there are a wide range of accessibility tools available, and Apple divide these into 4 categories. So visual, motor, hearing, and cognitive. And we will see some of those categories when we go on to demos later. However, as I've already mentioned at the start, we are dividing them up for a focus more on the learning side. So our categories will be reading, writing, focus, and physical accessibility tools today. And even though that is a narrow set of categories, we need to think about how these categories are connected to the wider aspects of learning, some of which are obviously more complex and multi-dimensional. So, Kerry, I'm about to start demos. Before I get started, is there anything that you want to add, or is there any comments that have come through in the chat already that we need to cover at this point?
Nothing from the chat as of yet. I think we're kind of preaching to the choir here with regards to understanding, accessibility and the need for accessibility, tools and things. The only thing I would say is most of the stuff we're going to show you today are things that I use all the time, even though I don't have any sort of diagnosed learning need. As Mary Jane said, they just make things easier and quicker. So it really is about that vital for some, but really there is a value to everybody. And that'll underscore everything that we talk about today. So I just wanted to make the point again right at the top. But that's all from me, I think, just now.
Perfect. Thanks, Kerry. So I'm just going to dive in with demos. The first category we're going to look at is reading tools. So I've got a few demos within this, and I'll just introduce them as I go through. And the first one that we're going to explore today is display and text size. And I should probably say as well, in terms of reading tools, we're thinking about our learners with any kind of visual impairments. So thinking about those that maybe have colour blindness, or again, just maybe benefit from a bigger text size. There's a lot of visual impairments. I'll not go through all of them, but thinking about those learners in specifically for this area. So I'm going to look at the display and text size. So I'm actually going to go to my home screen, and I'm going to look for the settings app, which is a grey icon that looks like a cop, and I'm just going to tap it to open it. I'm going to scroll down the side and I'm going to tap on accessibility, where most of the things we are going to look at today are within, and display and text size comes up in my new menu. I'm just going to go through some of these options. I'm just going to explain a little bit. I'm going to toggle some of them on and off so you can see what they look like. And then, of course, pop any questions in the chat. So the first one that comes up is we've got bold text. So it pretty much does what it says. If I toggle that on, it makes everything bolder. Again, it's a lot clearer to see. Our next one is larger text. I can naturally increase the size of my text with my slider at the bottom, but we also have the option to toggle on larger still accessibility sizes, and you can see that it allows me to obviously increase my text quite large. And again, pupils can absolutely customize this for themselves based on their own need as well. As I'm toggling things on, I'm also going to toggle them off just so it doesn't affect how it looks going forward for us. So I'll go back to display and text size. We've then got button shapes, and this one isn't as obvious to begin with when I'm toggling it on here, but what you will notice is next to display and text size, where it says accessibility, you can see that's become highlighted, and if I just toggle it off, it takes that away. So that's the difference there. It highlights the button shapes. We've got on-off labels as well. So when I pop that on, it changes all my buttons to the on-off logo, so it's clearer to see. So if you've got someone that's maybe colourblind and they can't see the difference between the colour, you can then obviously tell by the labels. We can reduce transparency, which improves contrast. We can increase contrast as well. Again, pupils can use this with any visual impairment that supports the increased contrast. I can differentiate without colour. I can smart invert, which changes the colours down the way, or I can do classic invert, and again it reverses the colours of the display. I'm going to skip colour filters for the minute because that's going to be our next topic that we'll explore, and I'm just going to talk about the last two. We can reduce white point. That reduces the intensity of our bright colour, so you can see it produces a slider, which means I can change, which you actually can't see when I'm presenting, but I can see it on my iPad, so you'll just need to take my word for it and give it a wee try yourself. But you can obviously adjust the intensity, and you've got your auto brightness as well. So your iPad will auto detect if it needs to be bright or not. I'm going to go to colour filters now because it's kind of part of display and text size as well, and I'm going to explain a little bit about these. So when I tap on the colour filters, it gives me 3 images at the top. The first image is the colour pencils, the second is a kind of grid of colours, and then the last one is an even fancier grid actually. So I'll explain what these are for once I show you the colour filter. So I'm going to toggle that on. And the first one is grayscale. And again, actually, Kerry, this isn't showing up on the screen as I'm presenting. But the grayscale, it basically strips your iPad of colour.
I'm going to see if I can show.
I don't know if it will work with background on, maybe.
Right, I'll get my background off and see if I can show. That's fine, carry on.
Oh, I feel like I've got a glamorous assistant now, which I'm really enjoying. So basically the 3 examples at the top are 3 examples of colour spaces, and they help you select the option that best fits the pupil's needs. So for example, if a pupil does have a visual impairment, there will probably be some kind of support in place. So for example, if they need some type of filter, that will be explained to you as a teacher. Oh, perfect, thanks, Kerry. There's a good example of grayscale. Then you will be able to use the iPad to choose the filter that you need. The second colour grid option shows the intensity of the colours, and the third is for the vertical lines on a variable colour background for colour deficiencies. So again, it's just ways that you can use that to then support the pupil to pick the correct filter. The second filter is the red-green filter. Again, sorry Kerry, it's not obviously showing. The third is green-red, and then we've got blue-yellow as well. We can also use the colour tint. So the colour tint totally changes the colour and the hue of the entire display. You can change the intensity of it, so you can make it lighter or darker. And you can also then change the hue as well. So it's totally customizable to the pupil's needs, and they're absolutely able to choose what suits them best. The next thing I'm going to then look at, I'll just take off my colour filter here so that my iPad
Could I actually jump in on that?
Yeah,
Murray?
of course, Kerry.
I think obviously that's no great that you can't see it, but it makes quite an important point, which is about how it appears to children and young people. So it only applies across the individual iPad screen. So if a child is using a coloured overlay, for example, maybe say a yellow one, if they then join the Apple TV and project, or if they join a meeting and share their screen, it doesn't show that colour filter, but it maintains the colour filter on the pupil's screen. So to the audience, there is no difference between their screen and somebody else's screen, which I think is actually quite a good, it's not great for us when we're trying to demo it, but it's actually quite a good thing. When they take screenshots, it doesn't have that coloured filter applied. If they record their screen, it doesn't have that colour filter applied. So I think that's maybe quite an important point to note.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true, Kerry, thanks. The last part of this reading tools section that I'm going to talk about today is the Speak Screen and Speak Selection tool that is available on our iPad. And while this feature is also amazing for those with visual impairments because it supports their reading and things as well, I actually really like using this tool for supporting reading in the early years, and we used to use this quite a lot when we were doing like kind of story time stuff for a bit of independent reading, and the pupils really enjoyed using it because it highlighted a lot of words and things for them, and you'll see in a minute when I show you how it works. But if we had like a common word that we were using that week for spelling, and they were using the Speak Selection to hear a story, they would say, oh, there's that word, and they would look at it, and then they would be able to identify it within the text, which was really quite nice as well. So that wasn't an accessibility need that we used it for, but it was just a feature to support reading in general. And I felt like because they were hearing the texts as well, it really supported the pronunciation of words, intonation, etc. when they were practicing their reading skills. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to set it up. And because I'm currently presenting and I'm using my microphone to present, I then can't actually show it to you on my iPad. However, a little bit of a Blue Peter moment here is I've prepared a video that Kerry will show just so you can actually hear what it sounds like as well. So I'm going to go back into my accessibility menu here, and this time I'm going to click on spoken content. I'm going to toggle a couple of different things on at the moment. So I'm going to start with toggling Speak Selection. I'm also going to toggle on Speak Screen because these two they're different options. So Speak Selection allows me to select a word or a sentence, and the iPad will basically speak it back to me. But Speak Screen automatically reads the screen for you, which you'll see in the video as well. And then also then going to go to the highlight content, and it's already on. And you can change this again, you can adapt it to needs. You can ask it to highlight words, sentences, or words and sentences. I've asked mine to underline, and at the bottom, I've also changed the word colour to blue because I personally find it easier to track it when the word is highlighted in a colour, but you can also change sentence colour and things as well. Terry, are you all right if I hand over to you just to play that wee video so that we can see what this looks like in action?
Sure thing. So hopefully you are now getting my screen, and I'm just going to hit play. Jane, please do let me know if it doesn't play with volume.
So now that I've got all my settings set up for speak selection, I'm going to demo it in this video. So first of all, I'm going to use the Notes app. So I'm going to tap on my notes. I've already got some sentences set up for us today. So if I wanted to just select one word, I would tap the cursor in front of the word, tap select, and then I'm going to press my arrow and then speak.
Selection.
That allows me just to select one word at a time. I can also highlight more in the sentence. Again, press my arrow for speak.
Selection and how we can set this up though.
I can also ask it to select sentences. So I'm just going to tap my cursor at the start of welcome and then the arrow, and it's going to speak sentence.
Welcome to the session, everyone.
I can also ask my iPad to speak the whole page. So I'm going to use Safari for this. I'm going to tap on the Safari app and I'm going to use this website here. Now to do a speak screen, I'm going to use 2 fingers and swipe them down from the top of my page.
As we all know, the classroom is always an extremely busy place, and in that busy environment, gathering evidence of learning and providing pupils with the opportunities to showcase their learning is crucial to the learning process.
And I'm just going to pause there because as you can see, I have a playback bar. I can play, I can fast forward, I can change the speed as well as making it faster or slower. And I can then press play again.
Finding the time for the latter can be a difficult task.
And I'm just going to pause it there. To get rid of that, I'm just going to tap on the X. And that is how I would ask my iPad to speak the whole page.
Thanks, Kerry. I've obviously went for the most boring voice there as well. I should also say that through that setting, you can change the voices, and you can also change the language as well. So for those people that have English as an additional language, or even if I've got my language teacher hat on and we want to do some work around modern languages, we can change the language there as well.
I'm going to just jump in on this while you reshare your screen, Mary Jane.
Yeah, thanks,
another thing that I think is important to note is that with the iOS 16 update, there is finally a Scottish voice for your iPad. So if you're looking for her, her name is Fiona. And she has quite a, I would sort of say, a bit of an Edinburgh accent, but that's been a long time coming. And I think for people who are used to Scottish voices and Scottish accents, or for people who are acquiring language perhaps through Scottish peers and colleagues, that is helpful to know. The other thing that is important to note is that if you type in a different language, it will automatically recognise that that's a different language and it will speak it in that language if it is available. So if Mary Jane had typed in comment ça va, it wouldn't read comment ça va in an English voice, it would read comment ça va in the French voice. So that's something that happens automatically, which I think is useful to know perhaps for bilingual learners who maybe type in their home language as well. So just a wee extra thing there on the top.
Definitely, thanks. I think I'm a wee bit offended now that they don't want a Scottish version called Mary Jane. They're missing out on a wee Falkirk accent there, I think. That would be fun. Kerry, just before I move on to the next section, do we have anything in the chat that we need to address at the moment?
No, nothing coming in through the chat. I'll maybe just give people a wee moment to pop any questions about reading tools in there.
That's fine.
And while we're giving people a chance to do that, I'll just say that I use speak selection all the time. I don't know why speak selection isn't just turned on as an automatic thing, but it's the first thing that if I was to go back to my classroom tomorrow and I could do one thing, it would be to get all the children to turn on speak selection. Rabia is asking, how do you do the speak screen? So could you go back, Mary Jane, and just show us the
Yep.
speak screen again? You can maybe do it on your iPad with the gesture. We won't be
Yeah,
able to hear it read, but
no
we can
worries.
see how it works.
So I've got it toggled on within my spoken content tab. So it's the second one down, which is speak screen. And it took me a little bit of practice to start with, actually, because you have to swipe down from the middle of your screen at the top. And I was like bringing all sorts of menu bars down, but I've managed to get there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Safari. I'll just go back to that article, and I've got my 2 fingers, and I just swipe down, and it appears in the middle of my page. What's really good actually is once it starts, what it's doing just now is it's actually reading all those tabs first, because it will just read whatever's on the page. You can see that it minimises, which is really helpful. So it's not just sitting there in the middle of your page, it minimises. And then if I need it back, I just tap on that, the little greyed out arrow, and it pops back up, which is really good. And I can pause it, I can change my speed there, and I can move forward and back as well, which is really good. So there it's doing it again. So I'll just come off that. Before I move on to writing, I'm just going to quickly turn these 2 things off so that it doesn't
And
do
before
anything
you
I'm not
move-
asking it to do.
Before you move on to writing, I'm just going to, Christina's asked in the chat, really good question. Do you have to turn these settings on the iPad to work while working in OneNote or Teams, or is the functionality already in OneNote? So we'll maybe just address this now. So
Yeah.
these settings that we're talking about today are applied across the whole device. So anywhere in the native apps, it will work. So it'll work in Safari, it'll work in Notes, it'll work in Keynote, it'll work in Pages, etc., etc. It will also work in any apps where the third-party developer, so in this case Microsoft, has allowed it to happen. Now that can depend on whether that app has allowed for the operational systems to overtake and be offered. We find, I think, that speak selection works across most apps. You can use speak selection pretty much everywhere. And the speak screen works in most places as well, but that will be on a case-by-case basis when it comes to third-party apps. So that's a really good question and a really good point to note. With regards to OneNote and other Microsoft applications, there are other built-in speech to text tools and dictation tools that Microsoft have as well. So sometimes there's more than one option for read aloud or speak selection. And Mary Jane's going to come on. She's going to show a wee example of this in just a wee minute, actually, when we talk about OneNote. But it's just to make you aware that this is a system-wide setting. It is available across all of the native apps and services that are on iPad or iPhone. But if you're using a third-party app from a third-party developer, things might not work as you expect. So just be aware of that.
Thanks, Kerry. So for no more questions, I'll move on to the writing tools just now. So obviously these are tools that will help support pupils with their writing in class. So I'm going to firstly look at dictation, which is an inbuilt iPad feature. So I'm going to go back to my settings again, and this one actually isn't under accessibility. I need to go into general, and then I'm going to go to keyboard, which is just about halfway down my screen. And then I need to scroll all the way to the bottom, and it says enable dictation. So I'm going to pop that on. It gives a little info box. I'm just going to say enable. So with dictation, it allows me to speak to my iPad, and it should type what I'm saying to it. So I'm thinking about those pupils that we have in class that may have difficulty writing due to a physical issue that they've got, or motor control. So I'm even thinking about, again, my younger learners who maybe haven't quite grasped their pencil control, but we really want them to be able to express their writing in some form. I've used this again in primary 2 actually to do a bit of free writing and things. So now that I've got dictation on, I'm going to go to my notes app and I'm going to use my notes app to demo this today. So I've got a note already set up here. This was the note I was using when I was recording the wee video, so I'm just going to tag on the bottom of that. To start dictation, I'm just going to tap my screen so my keyboard comes up. And on my keyboard, next to my space bar to the left, I've got a little microphone, and that's my dictation microphone. So I'm going to tap that. I'm going to speak into it. I'm going to say a wee message, watch it on the screen. And when I'm finished, there's a little icon that appears that I'm going to tap to stop dictation that you'll see at the end of the sentence. So I'm going to do that just now. Hi everyone. We are now looking at dictation as part of our session today. We are looking at how to set this up, and we are using the Notes app as an example. Okay, so I've recorded my message using dictation. I'm having a little look at it. It's actually quite accurate. So it doesn't need the Fiona Scottish voice, it just needs me. And it's picked up everything I'm saying. I'm obviously missing a wee full stop at the end of my last sentence, but that's totally okay. What I will say as a wee caveat for this is when you are using it with pupils, we try to encourage them to obviously speak quite clearly, but obviously it's a little bit trial and error, and they can practice their pronunciation, but it usually is quite accurate in terms of picking things up. You will notice that at the end when I finished, I tapped the little it's the little speaker, the wee microphone, sorry, icon with the X, and that just stops the dictation. I've used Notes because I really like the Notes app. Kerry will know this. I absolutely like to showcase Notes whenever I've got a moment. But obviously you can use it in other apps across your device as well. I've used this further up the school with pupils who have maybe just been a little bit more reluctant to write because they just need that wee bit of confidence. But again, I've also used it with pupils who just haven't been able to write because they've got a broken finger. So it's really quite flexible. I use it quite a lot when I'm taking my own notes because sometimes I just prefer to speak them. Kerry, you'll have used it loads as well, probably, I'm assuming.
I use this literally literally, that's a terrible thing for an English teacher to say. I use this all the time. I use this to write emails. I use this to write reminders to myself. I use this to write scripts for sessions like this. Because it allows me to speak in the flow of what I want to say, and then I can go back and edit it using, the keyboard and typing, etc., etc. One thing that has come up in the chat, and I think it's a really good question, Gillian is asking, did you activate something to enable automatic punctuation? So Mary Jane, if you could go back to that general section. So this was how we got to there in the first place. So we were in general, we went down to keyboards, and then when we clicked on keyboards or tapped on keyboard, we had the ability to enable dictation. And you can see there, Gillian, that you can allow or not allow auto punctuation. That's obviously up to you. The places that I've seen it most used in terms of having punctuation switched off is actually during assessments and things, rather than just for everyday use. But it's good to know that you can turn the punctuation off and on. Another thing that I kind of put in the chat, and just in case it's went by anybody, is if you've got particularly younger learners, maybe going into general and going into keyboards and going into dictation is maybe not the easiest thing to kind of coach them to do, and you want to just get them using dictation quickly. If you bring up your keyboard in any of the apps and you just tap on the little microphone, the first time that you ever do that, it will ask you if you want to turn on dictation for the rest of the time that you are using it, and you can just tap yes at that point, and that would save you having to go in to general and keyboards, etc., etc. But it's helpful to know how to switch it on and off once you've switched it on, But to switch it on initially, you can just tap that little microphone button the first time and enable it across all your settings.
Perfect. The other thing that I also forgot to mention that I quite enjoyed, I'm actually going to turn dictation on to show you that it picks up for emojis as well. Happy emoji, sad emoji, ice cream emoji.
I did not know it did that.
I absolutely love it. It's just the best thing ever. The only thing is you need to kind of know the name. So I know there's loads of emojis that there's ones that I look at and I think, what would you actually call that if you were trying to type it? So I think there's a wee bit of trial and error there with some of them, but it's quite cool actually. And I think kids would really like it. The pupils would love that. You might need to monitor a little bit, but it's quite a cool feature. Okay, so that's dictation. Kerry, I know you answered a question about some of the other features within Microsoft, and I'm actually going to move on to that now. And we're going to have a quick look at Immersive Reader, which is a Microsoft tool that also supports writing and reading. And for this demo, I'm going to use OneNote today. You can use Immersive Reader in other Microsoft applications, but OneNote probably has one of the best versions of Immersive Reader. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to open it, and again, in true fashion, I've come prepared and I've already got some text typed up here. But what I am going to do is I'm going to add another sentence. Now, the sentence I'm going to add is going to seem absolutely random. People might question me at this point and think I've maybe lost my plot, but it will show some of the features that I want to explain. So if you bear with me a second, I'm going to type my sentence. The cat sat on a red mat and ate cheese.
Now, Mary Jane is typing that, but she could have, as you can see from the keyboard, used dictation there if she had wanted to.
Yeah. So I'm typing for quickness. Now, to use the Immersive Reader feature, once I've opened my notebook in OneNote, along the top you can see it's already highlighted Home, I've got Insert, I've got Draw. I'm going to tap on View. And within View, the bar that appears, I've got Immersive Reader. Now, I'm going to tap on this, and when I do, it's going to open up a different style window here. And you can see that I've got a few different icons that I could tap on. There's obviously a play icon at the bottom of my screen, so that would read the text back to me. But unfortunately, if I will press play, I'll show you. You won't be able to hear it because my mic's in use, obviously, because I'm presenting. But you can see clearly that it is reading through. Now, if you were using that feature, I'll just pause it for now. Next to the play icon, we've got the settings, and again, you can change the speed of the voice, and you can also change the voice selection. You've only got between male and female. We don't have Fiona here, but you can choose, or pupils can choose what they're most comfortable with. At the top right hand corner, I've got 3 different icons that I can use. So I've got my text. I can increase or decrease my text size. Increased spacing comes on automatically, but if I wanted to obviously take that off, I can do. I actually prefer it with it on, but again, it's absolutely customizable. You can change font, and also we've got themes here, which are actually colour filters as well, so we can change the backgrounds to help pupils again with any visual impairments when we're using this. And again, we've got various different options that we can choose from. My middle icon is probably one of my favourite ones. I'm able to highlight parts of speech and syllables if I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to toggle them all on. And I can also have the option to show labels, so it shows me the parts of speech label as well. So you can see I've got my V for verbs and my adverb labels and things there as well. You can see that the parts of speech have, when I've toggled them on, they've changed colour. You can change the colours. Something that I used to do, it's very primary based, but something I used to do was change the colours to match the colourful semantics programme which we used in school that came from speech and language. Please don't ask me off the top of my head because I probably will get all the colours wrong, but obviously each part of speech had a specific colour. We used to make up the silly sentences, and I then used to use this immersive reader for those silly sentences, colour the parts of speech as best I could, as close to the colourful semantics, and then pupils were able to do that as well, which was really nice. It was just another exercise that they could do, and they could see it and create it themselves. And this is absolutely one of my favourite features. I'm going to go to my last icon, which is the book. I've got line focus, so I can change the view of what I'm reading. But this is the one, Kerry, I absolutely love this, and this is why I have typed this sentence. I've got a picture dictionary within my immersive reader, which will show me the picture. It shows me I can obviously tap the pronunciation, and you can see I've actually got Spanish there as well, because something else that I can do with this is I can translate the words into a different language. So I've got Spanish, but I can also translate the whole document as well if I want. So again, I'm thinking of pupils that are English as additional language. I'm thinking of the language lessons that I've been teaching, where I'm able to use that picture dictionary to support the languages. And what's really nice, when you tap on the picture dictionary and the word, you can then hear the pronunciation in that language as well, which is really good. Again, I can't play it just now for you, but it's really worth knowing that it's there, because it is an amazing tool that we can use within class. Kerry, that's me finished talking about immersive reader. So I just wanted again to check, is there anything that's come up, anything from the chat before I move on to my next section?
Yeah, just a wee second. I'm just going to move you.
No worries.
We've just got someone ducking out, so I'm just going to let them know what I'm going to do for them. Right, so nothing else coming up in the chat other than someone's having to leave and they just want to know where the information is. That's totally fine. Just wanted to bring that immersive reader thing in because it does make that point that Gillian has already touched upon, which, I think it was Christina, sorry, touched upon, which was, are the settings and the functionalities available across all apps? Third-party apps don't behave the same way. However, within third-party apps, there are often accessibility features that are unique to that app. And we have found, after lots of trial and error, that the accessibility stuff within Microsoft OneNote is superior to any of the other Microsoft stuff. So rather than using Word, I would maybe think about making a switch over to OneNote as a sort of standard app for your children and young people to use, just because the immersive reader that is in that is so much more powerful than the immersive reader that can be found in other places on iPads, such as Edge, etc., etc. So OneNote for the win in terms of Microsoft accessibility on iPad for sure.
Absolutely. I just love that picture dictionary so much. It's just so useful. Okay, I'm going to move on then to our next section. I'm going to focus on the focus tools. The first one up, again, is another favourite of mine, and it's actually called Focus as well. So I'm going to give this a go. It is through settings, and it's a wee bit further up from general. I'm going to tap on Focus. Now, if you've got an iPhone or a personal iPad or anything like that, you may already be familiar with some of these focus settings. One commonly used one is Do Not Disturb. I probably wouldn't have connected it to being a focus feature until I've obviously done this session and things, because I just used to say, oh, I'm putting on Do Not Disturb, but it actually comes under the focus feature. You can basically set up a focus that is totally customizable for whatever purpose you want. So you can see there's 3 presets. I've already got Do Not Disturb on, because top teacher tip, when you're presenting, it's really useful because none of my notifications pop up on my screen. I only get badges. I don't get, a Teams chat appearing at the top. I don't get anything else like that. My alarms and things, they don't go off. it's really quite handy, especially if you're maybe projecting your Apple TV. It's really just quite good to have on. It means I absolutely do not get distracted with anything else on my device because I've got my do not disturb on. I use it on my phone quite a lot as well. It's really helpful. There's another two presets there, personal and work. You can see that there's slightly different because they say set up. They're ones that I haven't used on my device. I do prefer my do not disturb one, but again, I could absolutely dive into those two and personalise them. I've actually got one on my phone for driving. So when I'm driving and I'm in my car, it comes up. So it just means, again, I'm not distracted by the phone, you know, going in the bag or whatever. So it's really quite helpful. So I'm going to just talk you through what it looks like when you set it up. So to set up a focus from scratch, in the top right hand corner there is a plus icon. I'm going to give it a tap. It gives me a couple of different options, fitness, gaming, mindfulness, reading, and then it gives me that custom option. So I'm going to go for that today just so we're doing it from scratch. So I'm going to tap custom. I really like this bit because I get to pick a name, a colour and an icon. So I'll not bore you with all my favourites, but I'm just going to call it school. I'm going to go for my favourite colour, which is green, if anyone's interested. And I could probably spend ages looking at all these icons. There's loads and I love them, but I'm just going to go for the wee graduation hat, which seems to be the generic school symbol at the moment. So I'll just use that. And then I'm going to scroll to the bottom and I'm just going to tap next. Now it gives me a wee bit of information here. It kind of tells me the things that I can then do within my focus. So I can silence my notifications. The second one, it says about sharing with friends. That's probably not as relevant when you're using the iPad because you don't have the same like messaging apps and things that you might have on an iPhone or a personal device. But it is worth noting that if you do have a personal device, that's really helpful. You can the app will share with those people that you are currently driving. You cannot answer. I didn't realise it that first when I set up my driving one on the phone. It was actually a friend that said, "I got a text from your phone," which is actually quite helpful. You can then turn on a custom home screen page, and you can also do the scheduling so it comes up. It starts at specific times. So let's see what it looks like. Oh, I've accidentally tapped away, so I'm just going to quickly change that. Apologies. So I'm going to tap customize focus. So this is what it looks like. Once you're in, you can edit your name, your colour and your icon if you wish. The silence notifications are the first things that we can tackle here. I'm going to start with the apps part because that's relevant to iPad. So I'm going to tap on apps and it gives me two options. I can allow notifications from, and you can see that at the moment Outlook and Teams are selected to allow. But what I actually want to do is I want to silence them. So you can see that they are now in my silence. And I can also add apps. So if I tap add, I can add Classroom, I can add Excel, WebEx. If Kerry's trying to set a meeting up for me, I can totally ignore that. And even Word. And then I tap done. And you can see that these all appear from my in my silence list. I'm just going to tap done. Obviously, the people one isn't relevant for the iPad as such because, again, we don't tend to have contacts on the iPad. But again, if you've got a personal phone, that's how you would set that up. You can silence notifications from certain people or allow notifications from certain people. I can customize my home screen. So if I choose, I'm just going to choose the first one. That's going to be the one that appears. And I can activate a smart schedule. So if I tap on for that, I can then set up a schedule, which allows me to change the time. It allows me to change the location. So you can see an example there's when I arrive at work. So for example, my driving one, when I arrive at work, the schedule finishes. When I get in the car, it starts. And I can also add a schedule for an app. So for example, when I open books, so if you're doing a reading task, for example, and your book is in the Books app, or I'm thinking of another app, Reading Eggs is one that comes to mind. You can actually activate the schedule for when you're using specific apps as well, which is really, really helpful. So it just means that pupils are able to totally focus on what they're doing at that time and there's going to be no other distractions appearing on their iPad and things pinging off, Teams and all sorts popping up because the schedule is activated. So I'm not going to set up a schedule at the moment. I just wanted to show you that you can absolutely do that. We also have focus filters to help remove distractions. So I can add a filter, for example, if I use Safari, you can allow opening external links in your focus tab. I can also toggle that off, which means I wouldn't then be able to open external links, which means that pupils can't then go off and do other things on their device that they shouldn't be doing, or they've not been asked to do. Kenny, do you have anything to add about the focus at all? Because I know you obviously have yours as well.
Yeah, I think useful for school and school iPads in terms of just knowing that it's there to support maybe children and young people who do get easily distracted by banners and pop-ups and notifications and sounds, etc., etc. They can actually, have a mode that's custom to them that they can maybe activate during the school day that allows them maybe a better opportunity to try and maintain focus throughout the day. However, I would say that this is probably the most useful to know with regards to personal devices. So I know for me, it has really quite honestly changed my life being able to turn on that do not disturb after 8 p.m. at night and not have any work stuff come through. Like my Outlook doesn't ping, my Teams doesn't ping, like it doesn't come through at all on my phone or on my iPad. It does mean that I maybe miss some things with regards to social media that I also turn off at about 8 o'clock. So if I've ever ignored you on Instagram or Twitter, it's because I've not seen it. But that's just allowed me, from a work-life balance perspective, to be able to really carve out time that is away from distraction and away from I'm talking about my phone here, so my phone really. So useful to know that it's there as a tool on iPad, but also on personal devices to help us and also to help our learners.
Yeah, I think sleep's probably one of the most common adult focus settings that people have on their devices as well, which is really good, but it is a pretty useful tool. The next two features I'm going to show you in terms of focus, I'm kind of just going to do like one and then the other because they kind of are similar, and it's dark mode and night shift. They have a similar feature within them. So these again are in settings, and I can also add these to my control center, which does make it quicker for me to use them. And if you haven't had an opportunity to set up your control center, or you don't know what I'm talking about, Connected Falkirk YouTube channel does have a little video that shows you about control center, which is quite useful. It's quite quick and easy to set up, and it just means things are at your fingertips. So don't worry too much if you don't know what I mean. But I'm just going to go through settings at this point to show you. And this time I'm actually going to go to display and brightness. Now I'm going to be honest here. I've got light mode on my iPad, but my personal device constantly lives on dark mode. I prefer it for my eyes. I find that that my eyes can be quite sensitive on my phone, and I just prefer apps when they're in dark mode. I just sort of like Twitter with the light mode. I can't cope with that. I like dark mode, and you can see that when I tap it, it changes obviously to a darker background. It gives a greater viewing experience in low light environments. It does obviously help people again with visual impairments as well. I just personally prefer it. I can do an automatic appearance change. So this is really clever. The iPad will use the time and the geolocation of your device to change between the modes, but you can also set up a schedule. So for example, I can have a sunset to sunrise schedule, so that's where it would then use the location of my device to work that out. Or I can have a custom schedule. So for example, once I am maybe finished at the end of the day and I'm home, I can change it to the dark mode, or at night time if I'm using the device, I can change it. So you can see a schedule here, 7 o'clock it's light, and then at 10 o'clock at night, it would then change to dark. And then night shift is also within here, and night shift automatically adjusts the colours of your display. It uses a warmer end of the spectrum, which just makes the viewing experience again easier on your eyes. So again, I can schedule it. I can do it from within a time range, or I can manually enable it until tomorrow. Again, it's one of those things you can't actually see on the screen. Mine has changed slightly, but I can make it less warm, or I can increase it for more warmth if I wish. And again, it's absolutely based on preference and need as well. Terry, I'm about to move on to another thing. Is there anything else that's coming up within?
Yeah, just a wee question from Gillian with regards to the focus filter for Safari, but we've just been having a wee chat in the chat about guided access. So if we've got time, which we're rapidly running out of, we might be able to show guided access if Gillian, if you are interested in seeing that. Obviously, what we're talking about today, we're talking about children being able to discern for themselves which of these accessibility features they would like to use or would want to use. Guided access is slightly different in that really an adult has to kind of set it up and then hand the iPad over, but we'll get to it at the end if we've got a bit of time.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Kerry. Okay, so this is the last tool within the focus section, and it's called Reader View. Reader View is an amazing tool to use on Safari on a web page, as it basically just strips everything back and only shows the relevant text and images. So I'm going to open Safari to begin with. What I'm going to do initially is I'm going to show you the main Connected Falkirk page. Reader View is within the website URL bar. The icon is I always say the small a and the big A, the little, the two letters. And the first thing that comes up is Show Reader, but it's currently greyed out. And at this point, I'm just going to mention that it's not always available on every single web page. This is one of the web pages that comes up where it is unavailable. But I will obviously now show you what it looks like when it's available. So I'm using a article that is on the Connected Falkirk website that I feel like I wrote many moons ago, but it's a perfect example of how it looks. And again, I'm going to go to Reader View. I'm going to tap the AA. Show Reader is enabled here, so I can tap on it. And what you'll see is it absolutely strips away any unneeded images. It takes away, if you're on a website that has like ads flash in, people get really distracted, or like things to touch down the side and they end up on a totally different page. It just absolutely takes that away and leaves the relevant text and images only. If I tap on the icon for Reader View again, I can actually increase and decrease my text size here. So I can make it as big as I want. I can change to a smaller text. I can change my background. I have 4 different options. So again, visual impairments, if pupils find it easier with a different background, they can absolutely change it. I can also change my font. So if I quite like actually the Georgia one, I find that easier to read sometimes. So you can change that as well within the Reader View option. Like I say, it's not always fully supported on all websites. Again, you need to try it to find out, but on most websites it is. So again, for example, this is an article on BBC Newsround, and if I show Reader, again, it strips all the extra boxes that were down the side to take me to other articles. It just leaves me with the text, and it leaves me with the relevant images as well. Something else I'm just going to quickly show you, it's not part of Reader View, but it is a quick tip on Safari, is if I hover over a word and I select it, I have the lookup option. It gives me a dictionary definition. I just really like to share it because it's quite cool. And it just means that pupils are then able to, if they're doing a reading task or even writing, they can support their literacy skills through using the dictionary there. It is built into the iPad. And if I do it again and I tap it, I can also use the translate option, so I can change languages again, hear the pronunciation of the word as well, if I was doing like a language task, or again, English as an additional language. So in a way, it's a bit of an accessibility tool, but it is within Safari, which is really helpful, and you can absolutely use that within lessons. Kenny, any questions yet on Reader View before I move on to my last physical tool before I hand back over to yourself?
No, just basically that obviously it works most of the time. When it doesn't work is when there's nothing to read. Like it can't go into Reader View if there's no text on the screen. So if the page is all just videos, or if it's all just videos and titles, like a YouTube homepage, for example, wouldn't show in Reader View. I don't even think the homepage of Newsround would show in Reader View because it's all just clickable articles. But it's available anytime that there's substantial amounts of reading or text that can be read. Otherwise, you would click it and it would just be a blank page because there's nothing to read.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so I'm just going to move on to the last section. I am going to demo one of the first things, and then I am going to hand over to Kerry because she's got a couple of things within physical tools to show us as well. This first physical tool is called Left Corner Swipe for Screenshot. There's absolutely not a short way to say that. It's quite long. And it supports pupils who have difficulties with or are even still acquiring motor skills. So when I think of this tool, I think of my primary ones. I've actually worked with nursery pupils as well, and those that just can't quite get a hold of the way that we would normally show screenshot, where we hold the power button and the home button and we press them at the same time. It's quite a useful, quick way to do that. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my finger, I'll go into Safari. I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to swipe it up from the bottom left corner of my screen, and it takes a screenshot. When it takes a screenshot from a left corner swipe, it has then all the same functionality as what a normal screenshot would. When I click on it, I can still use my pen tool, so I can still absolutely, not very well obviously because my opacity is quite low there, but I can absolutely draw on my picture. I can change the transparency, I can zoom in on different parts, so all the functionality of screenshot is still there. Once I'm done, I can then just tap done, and again I still get the same options to where I want to save it, if it's a photo or a file. But it's just a really, really quick way to take a screenshot. So again, I'll do it through notes. I'm in my notes app and I just swipe up from the bottom left hand corner and it takes the screenshot really, really quick and easy. Kerry, do you have anything to come in on just before I hand over to you?
Well, I'll maybe actually add on to your corner screenshot thing
Perfect.
when I start sharing my screen, because there's another thing that I
Okay.
think is probably more useful for teachers to know than it is for children to know. You can actually see it on your one there. You couldn't see it on the Newsround one, but I'm gonna join on. Can you just let me know if you can see my iPad screen? Yes, you can.
Yes.
Right. So one thing that I think is handy to know about is that's corner screenshot, that gesture. I'm just going to do it again, but this time I'm on a PDF rather than a website. And if I just swipe up from the bottom left-hand corner, as Mary Jane has said, you will see at the very top, I can save that screenshot, but I've also got the option for full page. And if I tap on full page, that actually gives me that entire document. So I don't have to screenshot every single page. I can just save the entire document. So I can tap on done and save PDF to files. And I'm thinking, particularly for secondary teachers, quickly saving and sharing past papers, for example, a really, really easy way to do that as long as you are in a PDF. But that's just a wee quick one, I think probably for teachers rather than for pupils. Now, I'm just going to go back to my home screen just now because I wanted to just jump in here and demo something that I have only recently started to think about and use a little bit, and this is voice control. Now, voice control, as the name suggests, allows you to control your iPad with your voice. And when voice control is activated, your iPad will listen for commands and it'll allow users to navigate and interact with your device using voice to do things like tap, swipe, type, etc., etc. And I think this can be really helpful for people who need or want to use their device hands-free. So it may be the case that this is somebody who has a physical or motor condition, but equally it might be useful in other cases as well. I've taken to having it on quite a lot when I'm working across two screens, particularly with my laptop and my iPad to the side. If I'm typing on my laptop, I can use voice control to move through different apps on my iPad screen without having to lift my fingers off the keyboard. So again, it's that sort of vital for some, valuable for all. So this will be my first time trying to demo this ever, so hopefully it's going to go well, but I'm going to show you how you turn it on. So we're going to go into that settings app again, which is the one Mary Jane's been in heaps and heaps tonight. I'm going to tap on it, and I'm going to go to accessibility on the left-hand side, which is about halfway down. And then under the physical and motor options, which is the second sort of block down, I'm going to look for voice control. And when I tap on it, it's the same as everything else we've seen today, really. It's toggle it on or toggle it off. And I'm just going to toggle it on, but before I do that, the first time, it won't have a toggle. It'll say set up. That is really simple to do. It's about 3 screens. I think it's about 3 taps. The first time that you use it, that just sort of gives you more information about what it does. But I've already set it up, so I'm just going to turn it on. So I've got this toggle, and I should now be able to control my iPad with my voice. So it does take a little bit of practice to get used to the commands, but you'll see in a second the iPad will give me a little bit of a guide. So now that I have this on, I can say things like swipe left. Oh, is it not going to pick me up? Swipe left. Swipe right. There we go. Swipe left. Swipe left. Open camera. Reverse camera. No, so show grid. Show grid. 8. Tap 3. Tap take photo. Tap take photo. Tap take photo. Okay, show grid. Just going to take this for speed. Show grid. 8. Tap 9. Delete. Tap delete. Delete photo. Tap delete photo. Go home. Turn off voice control. Tap confirm. And then my voice control is turned off. So as you can see, it takes a bit of getting used to. You do have to know the commands, but hopefully you saw there at the top of the screen, if I wasn't saying the right thing, it often prompted me to say, try say this instead. So it is kind of intuitive in terms of helping to guide students in how to use it. I was completely unaware that was so easy to use and readily available on my iPad. To be totally honest, I thought that I was going to have to get extra plugins and switches and all sorts of things if I was going to want to use voice control. So it's good to know that it is there and available to use. Now, Mary Jane, I can no longer see the chat. So is there anything on that in particular that's come up?
Nothing at the moment. One thing that I found when I was using voice control is if you ask it to show labels, it then labels everything on your screen, which I found really helpful when I was trying to do what you were doing, and I couldn't like quite think of the name of what I was asking it to do. I was trying to say take a picture, change, all these things. But when I ask it to show labels, it might come up. Show names.
There we go, show names.
There we go. That's the one. Yep.
Aye, that is a really good tip, actually. I never really
Mhm.
used that, but that's good to know. Turn off voice control. Tap confirm. Right, there we go. Okay, so moving on then to the final thing that I wanted to show you, and this just blew my mind when I first saw this a couple of months ago. This is something, again, I wasn't really aware of, and I've been really impressed with this. So this is called Accessibility Assistant Shortcut, and it's built into the Shortcuts app, which comes as standard on iPads which are running, I believe, iOS 13 or above. However, as Mary Jane has also said, she's on iOS 16, I'm on iOS 16. To be sure that you're getting the most up-to-date tools, you should be updating to the newest operating system if you can. This is also standard on iPhone. It's on my iPhone, which is an old one, an iPhone 11. So it might be useful to know that outside of school iPads, this is also available to users and families who are using iPhones and iPad in the home. So the Shortcut app is the one with the dark blue background and a sort of pink and blue square that forms that sort of old school S shape. And on my screen just now, it's right in between the green numbers one and the black Translate app. And I'm just going to tap it to open it. And on the left, I'm going to make sure that I am in Gallery. Now, you can see that Apple have put the accessibility shortcuts right at the top, front and center. I'm going to tap on this and it's going to give me all of the shortcuts that are available. Now, I think it's worthwhile having a little look at some of these if you have the will and the time to do so, because some of them are quite interesting. The next one I'm going to look at is Remember This, which I believe is actually designed for short-term memory loss, but I think that it might have some quite interesting uses in an education setting. Excuse me. However, today what we're interested in is the iPhone and iPad Accessibility Assistant, which hopefully you can see at the top here in that sort of blue purple box right underneath where it says Accessibility Tools. If I tap on it, it's going to give me a little bit of detail about what it does, and you can see here what it does. Using this shortcut is going to allow me to create a summary of accessibility features and resources that are tailored specifically to my needs. Excuse me. So to activate it, I'm going to tap Add Shortcut. I've already done that though, so I'm not going to do it just now. And that would add the shortcut to both all shortcuts and my shortcuts on the left-hand side. Now, if I go into all shortcuts, you can see it there on the second row, second one in, iPhone and iPad Accessibility Assistant. Now, when I tap on it, once I've activated the shortcut into my shortcuts, you'll see that it comes up with a new pane that's asking me what my specific needs are. And I can go in and tell it what it is that I find difficult. So let's just have a little play with this. So we've got vision, and let's say that I have a sensitivity to light. It's going to log that. It's going to take me back and ask if I want to add more or if I'm done, but I've got more that I want to add. So as well as my sensitivity to light, I'm going to go into cognitive, and I'm going to say that I have spelling issues. And I'll go back into cognitive again by adding more. And I'm also going to say that I have, let's say, mood changes. And I can keep going and keep going and keep going until I've added all the things that I feel like I need support with. And when I'm done, I'm just going to tap on finished. And what happens now is it will automatically generate and open a note in my notes, which then gives me a list of all the features on iPad that might help me with my specific needs. And it has, as you can see, along with the information about, oh, dark mode might be suitable for you. It also gives me links where I can watch, I can look at how to use dark mode, I can look at videos, etc., etc. And you'll see if I just scroll quite quickly, it brings up absolutely everything that you could do on your iPad to meet your specific accessibility needs. It's absolutely like, look how look how much stuff there is. So lots and lots and lots of stuff there that would help me, but that would help me specifically with what I have told the device I struggle with. I think, as we all know, everybody is different, and you might be working with a number of children or a number of families who are looking for more tailored advice on what accessibility features to make use of. I'm not saying that you would just direct them to this and let them get on with it. That wouldn't be the only support you would give them. But what a powerful little function to have at your fingertips to tell the families and to tell the pupils about, so that they can look at even further customizing their school devices or indeed their home devices. So hopefully you're impressed, as impressed with that as I was when I first saw it, and as well how impressed our SPLD teachers were at the centre when they first saw it. It's a little hidden thing that I wasn't really aware of, but that I think is really, really useful, particularly when we don't have a lot of time to come to courses like this and to find out about accessibility tools and learn how to use them to support children. This is something that's there, and it will automatically work for the children based on their specific tailored needs. And I think that's quite powerful. Mary Jane, was there anything else in the chat coming up about that?
Yeah, can we have the pathway to access that, the accessibility shortcut? Can you show us again, Kerry?
Absolutely. So that it is quite, it's kind of buried, which is quite difficult. So it's in shortcuts, which is I'm just going to tap and hold it so you can see me tap and hold it. This one here, with the sort of dark blue and the pink and blue squares. It should be on all of your apps. If you can't, it should be on all of your devices, hopefully. If you can't find it, you can just swipe down from the middle of the screen and type in shortcuts, and it will, if you spell it right, it will come up. So you open shortcuts. Now, when you first have all your shortcuts, it will just have like a couple of things that's put in for you. These are ones that I have sort of added. You have to add the shortcut. So it's in gallery in the top left, and it's in shortcuts for accessibility right at the top there. And when you go in, you'll see it. Now, there's hundreds of shortcuts. You can do hundreds of things with shortcuts that I think are so fun. But that's the one that I think we've got time to speak about just now. I don't think we've got time to talk about anything else. Is that helpful? There will be more information on that in the guide that we're going to provide you with in just a wee second. Just in case you're still looking for a wee bit more on that. I know that it can be a bit like, oh, when you're just watching along. So hopefully that's fine. So that kind of brings us almost to a close. It definitely brings us to a close of the demos and features that we wanted to show you today. More support is available. In particular, there are two resources that I think that you might find useful. So the first one is an Apple produced document, which is a PDF called Reaching All Learners. It is an interactive PDF, so it has links in it where you will be able to click on and get more information. You can scan the QR code, or I've put the link in the chat. This is something that I think would be really useful maybe to share with families, because it does give a lot of information that is kind of self-guided, which is quite useful. The next thing that I have is a slide that has obviously not been finished, which is QR codes to the Falk page if ready. Luckily, the DigiLearn Falk page is ready. So this is a QR code that just goes to the page that we've made specifically to support this session, that goes through the things that we've talked about today, It has little GIF demos, it has some clickable images, it has some embedded videos, etc., etc. So if there's anything that you want to revisit again from today, you can go to that page and learn more about it in your own time and at your own pace. Finally, as you might expect, we do have a feedback form and we are committed to ensuring that our CLPL offers do hit the mark. We'd really appreciate it if you could take the time just to fill this in before you go. It's really, really fast, I promise. I'll put a link in the chat as well, just in case you can't get onto it from the QR code. While you're doing that, if anyone has any burning questions, now might be a good time to get them in the chat before we send everybody on their way. We'll stick on and show you guided access for anyone who's interested, but for now I'm just going to be quiet just for 1 minute to give you time to fill in that feedback form, please. Okay, so that does bring us to the end, folks. If you're still filling in the form, that's absolutely fine. If you want to keep in touch or show us what you're doing with any of these tips and tools from today, we are on Twitter at Falkirk RTC. And you can also explore the hashtag Apple RTC to see what's going on in other regional training centres across Scotland and indeed the rest of the UK and Ireland. There's a lot of the Irish ones actually are very, very good. I've attended a few of them. These courses and sessions are always free and they are usually open to all. So don't be afraid or put off if it says that it's for Cork or it says that it's for Brighton or wherever. If they're online, then feel free to pop along to any of those sessions. Thank you to Mary Jane for facilitating today. Thank you all for coming. I know that the weather's been, well, it's maybe been a bit less good today, but it's been cracking. You're all very busy people. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for coming to the final session of the academic year for the Falkirk RTC. We hope that we will see some of you in the future after the summer.